but please do pipe up with any questions, any concerns, any accusations that I'm performing madness or anathema to, the gods, whatever you prefer. So embedding JavaScript for fun and profit, and yeah, let's be honest, it's more fun than profit. Yeah, I know. It's difficult to swallow. I'm a little biased. I actually work with JavaScript every day. I'm a Node developer in my day job. I've grown to like it. It's possible that's Stockholm Syndrome. I'm not going to say anything about that. But, so profit. Profit is something we all like to talk about. Now, bearing in mind, most of my experience is as a web developer. So that's the angle I see it from. That's where most of my use cases are going to be centered. If that's not your background and you want another use case, just yell at me, and I'll try and think of something. So, okay, profit, or basically, why would you want to do this? Well, modern web applications have a lot of client-side logic. Like we were saying with Charles's example, Flask is literally just serving up index.html, and Angular is doing all of the work. All that client-side logic, everything is rendered on the client, nothing is rendered, nothing's in the HTML. So SEO suffers terribly, accessibility tends to suffer, and just UX, time to first content, that sort of thing tends to suffer as a result. So a solution is render stuff on the server. Twitter went back to a server-side rendering model for a reason. I also couldn't resist that center slide, which if you can't see it very well, I'm sure it says something like MVC WTF, React plus Flux. And so again, this is surprisingly opposite, considering that Charles already went just before me. So another use case. I don't want to have Node.js in my build pipeline. I don't want to have twice as many Node modules, twice as much JavaScript code just to deploy my web application. Look, you should always use the right tool for the job. I'm sure we all agree. But why do I have to have a Ruby gem to deal with my Sass, a jar for a Clojure compiler, and a Node module in my deploy pipeline just to organize my CSS and my JavaScript? Python is good at a lot of these things. Why can we not use it? And there's also the fact that Python is notoriously difficult to secure. It's so dynamic. It's really hard to make it secure. JavaScript, on the other hand, is designed to run inside a sandbox. So if you want to have a scripting layer or some description in your Python application, JavaScript is not a terrible example of an idea. Okay, so we've decided to perform this madness. We've decided we want to embed JavaScript in Python. Okay, what are our options here? So we're going to just kind of go through a few of the ones that I found, and if you know of any others, please, like I said, do yell out. So, in case you didn't know, or you're not familiar with it, SpiderMonkey is Mozilla's JavaScript engine. It powers Firefox. None of its currently available bindings to Python compile. I really wanted to build this sample app using that top entry, PyderMonkey, just because of its name. Unfortunately, the fates were against me. So, okay, option number 2. I'm sure V8 doesn't really need any introduction. If any of us do web application development, it's the JavaScript engine behind Chrome. It's arguably the driving force behind, the performance of web browsers today. So here's a bunch of stuff. Most of you probably can't, even up at the front, probably can't even see the command lines here. Obviously they're aimed at OS X, but it turns out it's much easier to build under Linux because it's built using Boost Python. So unlike the other two, it's maintained. Someone has committed something within the last few months. It supports Python 3, which is great. It even has an OS X 10.9 build script. These are all great. And then it turns out that build script downloads and compiles V8 from source. And then you need a custom Boost Python that's linked against your Python. And it still doesn't work. But then I discovered that someone had already packaged up a bunch of binaries and put them on GitHub. They're available for pretty much any platform you can think of, OS X, Linux, Windows, 32-bit, 64-bit. they're there, all is well. And that repo is actually a set of binaries that someone compiled for Sublime text plugins. So, huge kudos to them. All right, so V8's a viable option here. PyExec.js is something that I came across. It's a high-level wrapper, and it unifies some of those APIs. It supports PyV8, and importantly, it supports a number of external runtimes as well. So it basically shells out, it calls in a subprocess, something like JavaScript core, which is built into OS X. SpiderMonkey is a separate process, Node.js, or Windows script host JScript, if you are cursed to work in that environment. And another option, which I personally like a lot because I'm a huge fan of PyPy, is the idea of saying, well, okay, PyPy has a JavaScript interpreter. Why don't we just use that? It's not just a fast alternative implementation of Python if you're not familiar with it. It's also a platform for building really fast language interpreters. And that sounds really cool. Unfortunately, it hasn't been updated in a while, and it isn't very feature complete, like, objects can't have methods or something. So not really feasible, wouldn't run that much real-world JavaScript. Okay, so I found a reasonable way to do this in my PyV8 bindings. Let's go ahead and do something. And I can anyone actually see that? Yeah. Okay. Just try and so for some reason my Reveal.js build created some kind of weird artifacts at the end of the lines. Please ignore those. I'm trying to figure out how to. Do any of you remember what the shortcut is to zoom in?
Command plus.
There you go. Awesome. Cool. I need to get my cursor back to my slide notes. Okay. So I take this binary, I put it in my virtual env, and then I put it in the right places, and then I say, okay, import PyV8. That works. And then I see, okay, PyV8, it's in this module, it's in pyv8.py, and there's a shared library object that goes with it. Cool. So let's run some JavaScript. All these examples are built on Python 3.4. There is going to be a repo as soon as I have the time to put one up, but it's not on GitHub yet. So you import PyV8 and you create a context. And the context is really the heart of PyV8, and it's the heart of running any kind of JavaScript in Python, and I'm given to understand in other situations as well. So then you take this context, and it is, it's a good modern Python citizen. It supports context managers. So you use your with statement, take your context, and just eval something inside that context, and it gives you a valid result. Great, you can do really trivial things in JavaScript. That was worth it. Okay, let's do a little bit more. React, any of you heard of React? Hands up. Awesome. It's very shiny. It is a front-end library for building single-page applications. So kind of the dumb thing in Python talks and Python demos is, I'll throw together a Flask app and you'll see. And because I'm kind of contrarian, I said, screw that, I'm doing Pyramid. So Pyramid is venerable but flexible. And this is a cut-down example of what it's actually doing. But that basically says, okay, I'm going to pull a few guests out of my database, and then I'm going to render this React JSX template. Okay. So, oh man. Okay, so my slides didn't compile properly, and there should be JavaScript code there. There's not. Give me 1 second. It's a very appropriate time for that to That's better. Emacs don't fail. Yeah. Emacs is failing me.
No. What?
I don't believe it.
Let's talk about it instead.
No.
Back on it.
Should we use a pen?
Yeah, clearly.
Emacs terminal. Do it.
Alright, just give me 1 second, right? Okay, So you can see the completely unstyled stuff over here, which you don't actually want to see. Load. No. See, this is what happens when you code on screen. I'm worried about my live demo in several seconds. Hooray! Okay, let's just zoom through most of that. Whoop. Okay.
Oh.
So that is an example of what Facebook calls JSX. It's their kind of XML-ish syntax for for embedding sort of your DOM, your content into your JavaScript. That gets compiled by their transformer into regular JavaScript, which is just using their virtual DOM, and then it's executed. So that's a thing. There's a lot more of it. This is just
That is amazing, is what that is. I think the entire audience is right now gasping.
Okay, so now time for a live demo, and this is where everything is going to fall over. So let me just make sure my server is running over here. And no, it's not. Okay. That's it. And I've lost my cursor. No.
Man.
There we are. All right. My company, Social Tables, is hosting a game night at 1776 on Friday, August the 22nd. And so I built a sign-up form. So this is a single-page app. This is the output of that React code that you saw. All of this is client-side, except it's rendered on the server for the initial load. And I will demonstrate. Those are the that's the log output from my pyramid application here, and you will notice that it has rendered a whole bunch of HTML right here out of my JavaScript code. And because I'm obsessed with timings and performance, I put a couple of those timers in there. The first load can take a while. That's about 50 milliseconds right here, which is not the fastest thing in the world. But once you compile it again, it gets about twice as fast because I've put a couple of optimizations in there, and I'll talk about those in a second. But first, let's revel in the fact that we now have HTML being rendered by JavaScript embedded in Python. And also, I know. See, what I should be doing is serving all of this from Emacs through like eList. That would be the way to go. So just anyone want to volunteer to be put up on the board there with me and my boss?
Yes.
Davis. And your Twitter is? Right. And as you may or may not have seen, that post succeeded. And there is actually a failure case, believe it or not. Cool. So, let's get.
So just a second. So that was
Sure.
the second part was rendered dynamically on the front end with React. So you do a back end render of your initial page load, and what would happen if I didn't have JavaScript enabled? Would it automatically fail back to the client side?
That is a very good question. I'm not entirely sure. That would not have done anything, basically, because all of that is client-side code, so it's an on-click handler that's doing everything. React is particularly well-suited to this sort of server-side rendering because React knows your DOM. React builds kind of a virtual shadow DOM. And so it's able to say, okay, I'm going to try and build my virtual DOM. Oh, wait, that DOM's already in place. Great, I don't have to do any work. And so it won't re-render everything on the client side, whereas some other frameworks might try to. Okay, so live demo has not crashed and burned so far. Great. Yeah, absolutely. Darn it. It's in the other tab. Of course it is. There. So, quick talk about the optimization that I showed you a second ago, where the second time you load everything, it happens twice as fast. PyV8 gives you a chance to kind of pre-compile something into an object, and then you can cache that in memory and then load that into new contexts as you create them, and that's what I'm doing. So there's an example, and for more complex stuff like the JSX transformer or moment.js, any of you guys ever use that on the front end? That is surprisingly huge and takes forever to load in V8, so that gets like 8 times faster. And that's it for me. Questions, comments, wisecracks?
Is the context manager, it closes the context panel, is the point?
Yeah, a JavaScript context, in order to allocate all the memory and so on for V8, it needs to be entered and it needs to be disposed of. So that's what the context manager is for. We make sure that we enter it and it leaves it when it goes out of scope.
You kind of alluded to there being like just the different tools for different jobs and having the various JavaScript components in one's web development stack.
Sure.
Has there been any movement towards doing something like this, but for like node packages, or is that still largely?
So basically, anything that'll run in the browser without too much trouble, and React, fortunately, they've done really good engineering on it, and it will run in the browser without requiring a lot of the infrastructure that Node provides. Anything like that can be run in just V8 because the browser is a very minimal environment. Node provides a lot more. Node provides process primitives, it provides a module system, all of that. Part of me is very, very tempted to re-implement all of that in PyV8 and not have to load Node ever, at least in my Python code. But that's not in place yet. So, yeah. A large part of it is also very disappointed that none of Mozilla's bindings compile. They don't even compile. It's not that they don't work, they don't even get there.
Is SpiderMonkey still alive? I thought
Oh,
they
yeah.
were on like
Spider
Monkey by now.
Odin Monkey is the ASM.js, but SpiderMonkey is what everyone uses in regular Firefox.
Okay.
Yeah,
I guess
SpiderMonkey is the name for like the broader project. I think they're on like Ion Monkey for the actual JIT
Okay.
right now. Cool. Any other questions? Anything?
I get the fun part. Where's the profit part?
So better SEO makes you money. Better accessibility wins you contracts, especially with the federal government and so on. Better UX, better time to first load. That sort of thing is very important, especially on mobile. And so if you have a website that loads very slowly on your iPad and then populates versus someone else's website, which is rendered on the server, and flashes into being in all glorious Technicolor on your iPad, you're going to get all the customers, and they aren't. That's the profit.
A while back I played around with something that was called PHTML, which seemed to do a lot of this same stuff, but not with the like almost web component like markup where it scattered that where you had to write your own pseudo language. Does this handle like stuff like pushing history on the backstack? Or
React doesn't do. I don't think it does built in. There are components. There are third-party components for it. So React is built and maintained by Facebook. It's in use by them in production. So if you want to try it out, it is a good bet for a component that'll be around for a little bit, at least.
Is this code on GitHub?
This code is not on GitHub yet. It will be as soon as I get home, and hopefully before I go to sleep. I've had a long day.
You didn't happen to do timings against Node, so if it's like 20 milliseconds.
Oh, I did not.
Okay.
I could. That's a very good suggestion. Thank you. I will.
I want to repeat that question.
What?
I want to repeat what he said in the video.
Sorry.
Never mind.
Don't worry about it.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yes, timings against Node. Yes. I will do timings against Node as well, just to see how those things go. If you have a simple enough app, just do it in Node. Personally, my pain point with Node is when the logic gets complicated and the callback chains get absurd.
Have you used XCopyScript?
I have, and I don't know. Too many abstractions and not good enough source maps, basically. Okay.
All right, let's give it up again. All right, so anybody who wants to talk to any of the people who are hiring anything, we'll do that near the back of the room. Um,
That's revealed next.